The following presentation was prepared by Roberto Scano, an Italian expert on accessibility of information and communication technologies. The title is Digitalization to Simplify Accessibility. Understand why accessibility isn't just an IT issue. About Roberto. He's been dealing with accessibility since 2002 and participated in the drafting of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.0 and 2.1, and also the Authoring Tools Accessibility Guidelines 2.0. He helped to edit the European norm 301549 and the Italian Stanca law on implementing regulations on accessibility. He's also been active in regulations implementing the EU Web Accessibility Directive. He prepared the official translation of Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.0 and 2.1 to Italian, and also the European norm 301549 versions 2.1.2 and 3.2.1. In the field of technical standardization, he has been the president of UNINFO Uni CT531 on e-accessibility, an expert of ISO JTC1, SC35 user interfaces, expert at CEN, CENELEC, ETSI, Joint Working Group e-accessibility, and expert on telecommunications and electronic and information technology advisory committee of the USA Access Board. Part 1, about accessibility, what it is and why it matters. Two fundamental concepts are introduced here. Number one, autonomy. People with disabilities have the right to be able to operate in total autonomy with the support of assistive technologies. Affirming you can get help from someone means discriminating against people with disabilities because in many cases you want confidentiality of the actions. 2. Standards. The standards for developing affordable products have been around for years. The first for the web date back to 1999. Actually, the most used European standard for all ICT products and services is the European norm 301549. The world of disabilities is made up of people with all kinds of different requirements related to their impairments or difficulties in communication and in activity. There are 6 pictures on this slide showing a young lady who is using sign language to a computer, a blind young man walking with a white cane, another lady who's looking at the computer, someone else who's sitting in a wheelchair and working on a computer, a young boy holding his head in exasperation with a pencil and paper in front of him, and also a young girl, again holding her head in frustration, looking at a screen. Accessibility inside the ISO 9241-11. Accessibility refers to the extent to which products, systems, services, environments, and facilities can be used by people from a population with the widest range of user needs, characteristics, and capabilities to achieve identified goals in identified contexts of use. So this refers to different senses, sensory abilities, and situations which may be permanent, temporary, or situational, and which then have an impact on the ability of the person to perform an operation, for example, on a website or using an app. In terms of touch, for example, a permanent disability would be having one arm. A temporary condition would be having an injury of the arm. And a situational context would be that of a new parent who is holding a young baby. In terms of seeing, a permanent condition would be a blind person. A temporary condition would be having cataract. And a situational condition of use might be a distracted driver. In terms of hearing, a permanent condition would be a person who is deaf. A temporary condition would be a person with an ear infection, unable to hear clearly. And a situational condition might be that of a bartender in a noisy bar or shaking a drink and can't hear someone who is trying to communicate with him. In terms of speaking, a permanent condition would be someone who is nonverbal. A temporary condition, someone who has laryngitis. And a situational condition, someone, for example, who has a heavy accent and is difficult to understand. The four main principles of web accessibility, according to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. First, perceivable. Information and user interface components must be presentable to users in ways they can perceive, for example, for users without vision. Second, operable. User interface components and navigation must be usable so that users can interact with interface objects, for example, using the keyboard to navigate the screen. Thirdly, understandable. Users must be able to understand the information and operation of the user interface, for example, helping the user in filling out forms. And fourthly, robust. Content must be robust so that it can be interpreted reliably by a variety of user agents, including assistive technologies. With the evolution of technologies, the content must remain accessible. Part 2, accessibility and CSR, corporate social responsibility. Is accessibility covered inside CSR activities? Web accessibility is an aspect of corporate social responsibility. It provides improved access, interaction, and social inclusion for the people with disabilities, which is a primary aspect of corporate social responsibility. CSR is also called corporate citizenship, corporate responsibility, or responsible business, generally meaning conducting business ethically and operating an organization in such a way that treats internal and external stakeholders ethically. It increases human development and is good for society and the environment. Web accessibility can impact an organization's employees, stockholders and board members, suppliers and vendors, partners and collaborators, customers, and others. Thus, web accessibility is an integral part of CSR in demonstrating an organization's commitment to providing equal opportunities. Just as an accessible website can demonstrate CSR, an inaccessible website can undermine an organization's other CSR efforts. What accessibility can give to business? Well, it can drive innovation. Accessibility features in products and services often solve unanticipated problems. It can enhance your brand. Diversity and inclusion efforts are so important to business success and are accelerated with a clear, well-integrated accessibility commitment. It can extend market reach. The global market of access of people with disabilities is over 1 billion people with a spending power of more than $6 trillion. Accessibility often improves the online experience for all users. And accessibility can minimize legal risk. Many countries have laws requiring digital accessibility, and the issue is of increased legal concern. Part 3, legal issues. Legal risks and embarrassing situations to avoid. Legal risk around the world. Over time, the legal risk has increased with the adoption of more specific laws and policies in countries throughout the world. The Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, CRPD, is a comprehensive human rights document that includes a direct reference to the rights of all people to have equal access to communications technology. This was passed by the General Assembly of the United Nations. More than 175 countries have ratified it by 2018. The European Commission adopted the European Accessibility Act, requiring ATMs and banking services, PCs, telephones, TV equipment, telephony, and audiovisual services, transport, e-books, and e-commerce to meet accessibility requirements. In the US, the number of legal actions continues to rise, and courts increasingly decide in favor of equal access, often citing the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA. Structured negotiation is another way that legal pressure is effective, encouraging companies to meet accessibility requirements while avoiding litigation. Countries in Asia and Oceania refer in national laws to already cited standards like W3C and Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Legal accessibility issues in the USA. A graph is shown from 2018 to 2001, in which the rate of litigation has increased from 2,314 cases to 4,055 cases in 2001. 74% of the cases in 2001 were to do with e-commerce and 26% in other industries. Many companies have received multiple ADA-based lawsuits. Often the first lawsuit is for the website and the second for a mobile app. Additional lawsuits have been filed against the same website, app, or another related brand in the case of a holding company. In some instances, the same website receives lawsuits from different plaintiffs. The best defense against repeat lawsuits is to rapidly improve the accessibility of all public-facing digital experiences. 412 of the Internet Retailer Top 500 list received an ADA-based digital lawsuit related to one of their brands in the last 4 years. Large e-commerce sites are complex, changing content and code often, and many have also a physical location or nexus. This combination makes them very likely to receive lawsuits if they do not have a strong accessibility program in place. Here are a couple of user cases or bad examples. Beyonce has a website run by Parkwood Entertainment, and a lawsuit claimed against Beyonce.com was found to violate the Americans with Disabilities Act by failing to accommodate visually impaired users. This class action lawsuit violated the ADA by denying visually impaired users equal access to its products and services. A second example is Domino's Pizza, which resisted digital accessibility and lost more than just a customer. They had to pay out to settle a case against them for lack of accessibility of their website. There are also good cases to highlight. Starbucks has committed to a higher standard of accessibility for disabled Americans. The coffee chain committed to offering new technologies and design standards to improve inclusivity, and will also open 1,000 more community stores by 2030, which comply with the accessibility requirements. Also, McDonald's has an accessibility kiosk, which allows people who are blind or with low vision to access the menus and order in the stores. McDonald's partners also with Vispero to provide access for blind and low vision customers using its self-order kiosks. What about tourism? Digital accessibility is essential for accommodations, museums, restaurants, transports, and any other facilities. In terms of numbers, did you know that online travel booking had a $432 billion market size in 2020? And this is estimated to increase to $833 billion in 2025. As technology becomes a crucial part of our lives, the way that travelers plan and book their trips today have evolved. In 2022, 68% of all sales in travel and tourism were made online. This increased from about 55% in 2017 and is likely to reach almost 70% in 2026. 5 steps to fixing a website or mobile app before or after an accessibility lawsuit. First, remediate or rebuild. Determine whether to audit and remediate the existing site or app or rebuild a fresh accessible site or app. Second, audit. An audit is needed to determine what needs to be fixed, using both automatic tools for websites and accessibility experts. Thirdly, remediation. Remediating, although not technically difficult, can be labor-intensive and therefore very expensive. Fourthly, education and outreach. There's a need to educate people involved in digital communication about accessibility issues. And fifthly, certification and accessibility policy shown on your web page. Finally, once the audit and remediation has been completed, consider creating an accessibility policy page that A, states your commitment to accessibility, B, lists all the remedial efforts already expended and ongoing, and C, provides a certification of compliance from the company that does the audit and remediation. In Appendix, there's a list of technical and regulatory references. In Europe, the key reference is the European Norm 301-549, version 3.2.1, 2021-03, Accessibility Requirements for ICT Products and Services. The European regulatory references are Directive 2016/2102 of the European Parliament and of the Council of 26th of October 2016 on the accessibility of the websites and mobile applications of public sector bodies. Secondly, the Directive of 2019/882 of the European Parliament and of the Council of 17th of April 2019 on the accessibility requirements for products and services. The USA regulatory reference is the Americans with Disabilities Act. And for other countries, you can look at https://www.w3.org/WAI/policies/. Thanks for your attention. This video production was prepared by Roberto Scano, Italian ICT expert at the AccessibleEU Resource Centre in April 2023. The narrator was Ivor Ambrose, European Network for Accessible Tourism, ENAT. For more information about AccessibleEU and ENAT projects, consult the ENAT website at www.accessibletourism.org/projects. This video recording was co-funded by the European Union. Its contents are the sole responsibility of the author and do not necessarily reflect the views of the European Union.